Welcome to the Rock and Roll Show podcast. We're here to share the magic of experiencing music together with strangers and friends, and to get to know our guests a little bit better through their experiences with music of all kinds. I'm your host, Alex Gadd, and I do this podcast because I relate to people best when talking about music. Finding out how someone got into music and how listening to and making music helped shape who that someone is today allows us to get to know and understand one another better. Today, we're welcoming Ken Rusk to the show. Ken is an entrepreneur, a mentor, a business coach, and a best-selling author of the book Blue Collar Cash. His work is split between running his own construction business, Rusk Industries, and helping people to find their own way into a career that's both fulfilling and lucrative for them, be it a white or a blue-collar career, with the ultimate goal of building a life of comfort, peace, and financial freedom. Oh, and he's also an amateur musician. I'm very excited to have him share his story with all of us, so let me welcome Ken to the show. Ken, thank you for joining me today.
Thanks, Alex. I really appreciate it. Looking forward to our discussion today.
So, before we get into your life story, how did music come into your life?
I was probably the same as most young people. My very first album was a Kiss album, and I literally had Detroit Rock City and all those. I had a big album with. I took the cellophane off and I put it on the record player, and that's how we did it. I mean, I was lucky because we were able to rig kind of a bass speaker to the regular speakers that were there. So I burned that whole album up. I listened to it like crazy. And you think about people who do air guitar, right? I was always an air drummer, so I always went towards the air drumming side of things. And I just loved it. And what's interesting is I always loved music. I always loved all different kinds of music, which was really cool. I wasn't just stuck on like
Sure.
one type of genre, if you will. But I didn't start drumming until I was 48 years old, actually really drumming. So one day I said, I'm going to do this. I went out and bought myself a beautiful rack with DW
The
drums and
best.
laid it all out. I even bought like one of those multicolored lights that would spin around inside the drum and make it look cool. And I had no teaching. I literally put a set of headphones on. My first song was Like a Stone by Audio Slave. And I just slowly went with it until I could split my brain enough to do four things at one time, which was like being born again. It was so hard. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. And I still do it to this day, and I love doing it.
So, how long did that take? Just in general terms, from the day you sit down with your new kit, you put your headphones on, you try to play like a stone. How long before you were adept enough to feel like you could play out with other people?
Well, the one thing that I learned, first off, I learned like a stone in one day. That was I mean, as soon as I got the fact that I could separate my 2 feet from my hands, that was an epiphany. But I would say it was about 3 or 4 months before I could feel like I could go out and play with my buddies, which we did. We made babysitting money back in the day. But it was so fun because I suppose with a guitar, and the purists are going to disagree with me, but with a guitar, everybody knows you made a mistake if you're off, whatever. With the drum, as long as you keep the basic beat, your fills and your rolls and everything you do around that, they're all just creativity. So I don't think I've ever played the same song the same way twice. And most people don't know that. So I could just sit back and hide. As long as I could keep that same beat going, I could kind of do what I wanted. So I didn't feel the pressure to be perfect, I guess is what I'm saying.
I think that for rock and roll music in general, unless it's very specific and very orchestrated, the looser the better. I like my music to be a little messy, and I think that's what rock and roll is all about. Do you play out with a band today?
I haven't played out with a band in a couple of years, but we are getting that back together, as they say. We go through families and this and that. My son-in-law can play 7 or 8 different instruments, and he has a friend that can do the same. It's so much fun. I remember we would go to these small bars where you wouldn't see 6 people in there, and we would say, we want $500 to play, and the bar would say, "There's no way I can afford that," and we would say, look back at him and say, "No, there's no way you can afford that because we're going to bring you 300 people, and so get ready for that." So we would advertise, and we would have 300 people go to these little bars, and they'd run out of booze and beer, and they'd have to run down the street to buy more. It was an absolute blast. I remember one time we colored ourselves all up for Halloween, and no one even knew who I was. I looked like a zombie, and I had it all professionally airbrushed, and I played, and there was, paint all over my drums. It was amazing, and it's such a great feeling when you get a crowd going. I can only imagine what somebody like Pearl Jam goes through, who I just found out is touring the U.S., and I'm gonna get some of their tickets.
Yeah, next year, hopefully they'll be out again. I agree with you. I've only played in bar bands, cover bands, and it has been an absolute joy. And I'm looking to get a new band together. So anyone out there listening, hit me up. We got to put a band together in Southern Connecticut. So that does lead into your life story, though. You are a self-educated self-starter. And so let's start at the beginning of that. Your book, and one of the reasons we're here today is to promote your book, Blue Collar Cash, which I read and made some notes in. I loved it. Thank you for
Thank you.
for sharing this with
Thank you.
us. Your book is really about, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's about how there's no one path to success, and everybody needs to really look inside themselves and find their own path to what success looks like. I mean, at a very high level, that's what, to me, I took away from the book.
Well, yeah, one of the things that I found was back about 30 years ago, the naturally occurring choices like shop class or military career or going to college or just going right into the workforce. Those choices were slowly eliminated from the psyche of high schools and from guidance counselors and from even parents who were hoodwinked into thinking you can only be successful if you go to college. I mean, that has simply never been true. And it isn't true today. It's especially less true today than it's ever been with supply and demand the way it's working. So I don't necessarily care if you want to be a blue collar, white collar, pink collar, whatever collar you want to be. My premise is, Alex, that you need to figure out what you want your life to look like and why you're doing any one of those collars before you set out and do it. Because the real goal of life is to set yourself on a bunch of different timed pathways to different things that you want to manifest into your life. That's a fancy way of saying, I want a bunch of things. I want to live a certain way. And I need to think about those things every single day and how I'm getting on my path to getting those things. Because once you start out with what you want your life to look like, which is the main goal, by the way, then the rest of your choices kind of open up for you. I mean, you don't live to work, you work so that you can live. And it's the living part that I'm interested in because there's lots of work that'll get you there. It's not just one
Mhm.
pathway. And that's why I thought I needed to say something because all these people were thinking, I'm going to shove my kid into school. He or she's going to have all this debt. They're going to come out with a degree. And at least I did my job, but they can't use their degree. They can't make the money to pay the debt off. And there's more ways than that. And I just had to stop that madness if I could, just for a bit.
So let's talk about your background. You graduated from high school and you had been a working class kid. Your dad was successful in the grocery business, but yet you still understood the need to work and you did all kinds of kid jobs that I did, delivering papers and other things like that. But at some point right before you graduated, I believe there was a business right next to your high school that changed the course of your life. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So my father was successful, but he was successful later on, meaning I was already 16, 17, 18 by the time he got to be successful. I watched him grind out grocery store jobs, being the guy that chopped lettuce to stocking shelves to doing all those things when I was a young kid. I had four brothers and we lived in a very small house. He was a Marine and he ran it like a barracks, which was fun most of the time. But he would say, I can do certain things for you, but if you want beyond that, then you have to go out and figure out a way to get those things. And so, like you said earlier, yeah, I did a lot of part-time jobs early on, but what I recognized was the beauty of trading labor for something I wanted to come into my life, where it was as simple as a aluminum baseball bat or something like that. I thought, well, that's pretty cool. So as I was younger and as I was looking to get into some of these more serious jobs, the things got bigger. The aluminum bat turned into your first new used car and then your first apartment. And you had to find a way to cover those things. So there was a business next to my high school. And we used to cut through the fence after school to go walk to the carryout, and we would walk by these businesses. There was several of them. And this particular one had a lot of grown-up talker toys, backhoes and all those kinds of things, dump trucks and people milling around. And so I thought, well, what's going on there? I knew someone that worked there. So I said, hey, I think I can do this. They said, well, we dig ditches. And I said, fine, I can do that. So I literally dug ditches in the summertime. And then in the wintertime, I worked in the office. And it was great because I learned the front half of the office and the back half of the office. I learned kind of the whole thing. And that helped me out because when it came time to talk about college, my father never went to school. Some of my brothers did, some of them kind of didn't. And so it wasn't like you had to. So I said, they came to me, they wanted me to open up franchises around the Midwest, like go out there, start this business from scratch, even doing the build out of the office, ordering the phones, the computers, everything. And so I did that. 18, 19, 20, 21, 22 years old. And I got really good at kind of opening these little hubs and then moving on to the next one, Chicago, Columbus, Cincinnati, Pittsburgh. And you get tired of living out of a suitcase, but you're getting great experience that way. So then
Sure.
finally we moved to Northwest Ohio, which is where I live today, and started my company there with 6 people. And I think we have nearly 200 today. So it's been a hell of a ride.
I love that story. I do believe that your 20s are for that. If you sacrifice some of the comforts that you might see on social media, it really pays off. And you talk in the book, you give a basic compounding interest story that underscores value of putting in the work, putting in the savings, doing the things that you need to do to build the foundation for a happy, successful life in your 20s, even in your late teens. And that compounding effect really pays off down the line. Can we just define blue collar? I think it's a term that a lot of people use and maybe people don't even understand why they're using it these days.
Great question. A very long time ago, when things were just being built, infrastructure was just being built, railroads and bridges and highways and canals and all that. Typically, if you were an educated person, you would walk around with a suit on and you'd have one of those high plastic white collars that you would snap onto your suit. And you could interchange that plastic collar with almost anything you were wearing. And you were typically more educated and you were typically in a more professional career, like an architect or an engineer or teacher or whatever. Those were considered white collar jobs. So the guys that were out there working, digging, constructing, building, maintaining, whatever, they typically wore blue jeans and blue jean shirts. They call them dungarees, or there's lots of Levi's, a lot of different names back then. And they were
Sure.
blue collar clothing. So literally the collar was blue because the shirt was blue. And so those were considered blue collar workers, and the white collar workers were considered white collar. It was as simple as the clothes that they wear. The thing that's different today is the demand and the skill level. Supply and demand is a funny thing. It's like, dying. It's unbeaten. Okay. But blue collar is the same way. So by the time you put your feet on the floor every day to the time you walk through your house, get ready, and then get in your car and go to church or school or your office, whatever, you're still crossing about 10,000 blue collar jobs or more that are still viable to this day. And they stigmatized those people back in the day because they were more laborer type people. But try to hire an electrician right now, or a welder, or a plumber, or
Plumber.
or a
Yeah, it's
carpenter.
almost impossible.
And how long does it take and how much are they charging you? Well, supply and demand is a funny thing like that, because if you choke down the supply of those types of people, guess what happens? Where supply is low and demand is high, that's where the money goes. And that's what you're seeing today. I love it. I think it's fantastic because some of my friends, including myself, I mean, it's where all the money is right now, is to be in that type of work.
You use the term in your book. What is blue collar cool?
But it's interesting because when my book got published, Blue Collar Cash, when it got published, my publisher, HarperCollins, one of the managers that was working there that gave me my deal, and she actually won a bidding war of 7 different publishers, which is a whole nother story. I can't even believe that happened. But she said the reason I picked this book is because all of my friends that are making any money and have any type of lifestyle are all blue collar entrepreneurs. And here I am. I went to this Ivy League school. I got this huge debt, and I don't know when I'm ever going to pay it off. And I'm making money, yeah, but I mean, those people are just cool. They're loving life, and they don't talk about it. You know what I mean? They don't go around and say, "Well, I went to Wharton or I went to Harvard or I went to wherever." I mean, they don't even
Right.
do that. They just kind of live their lives. They live great lives. They make great money. They don't talk about it because nobody asks them, and so they just have this calm cool about them. And so my whole thinking was blue collar cool is a way to describe people that you don't even know how successful they are, but you're shocked to find out. And you never heard it from them. You heard it from somebody else who maybe knows them better than you do. But they're in charge of their input. They're in charge of their daily input and the quality of that input. They're in charge of their output. They're in charge of their day, their time, their schedule. They're in charge of their financial gain. And they're in charge of their future. And so they have this coolness about them that they're the ones. I mean, it's up to them and them only, but they love it that way.
Having gone to college and not being a blue collar worker, I see the value of it now that I'm older. And I wish that there had been a book like this when I was younger.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, it's great. Do you have a sense of how someone might decide whether college is right for anyone or not?
Yeah. So if you look up different ways of learning, you'll see that there's half a dozen ways of learning. Okay. One of them is called tactile. Okay. Tactile learning is with these two things. I'm pointing to my hands now, where
Yep.
you immerse yourself in handling something, touching something, fixing something, working on something. And your whole life, you attract yourself to what you're interested in. If you're good as a kid at building things or breaking things and fixing things or maintaining things or growing things or whatever, then you really need to take a look at if that's kind of your happy place. Don't necessarily leave that just because someone tells you you have to go to school. So that's one way. The other way is if you went to any Lowe's or any Home Depot or Menards or any of those types of places, and you just went to the commercial desk where they supply all the contractors, and you
Mhm.
say, "Do me a favor, just tell me what's missing in this town." They will tell you, "Oh yeah, all the stonemasons are retiring. No one's building outdoor kitchens anymore. No one's doing this. No one's doing that. The ones that are left are booked out for like a year, and they're making a killing." They'll tell you everything you need to know about what's in demand in your area. And as a businessman, you don't necessarily care what it is. I mean, I could probably flip my whole staff to selling windows tomorrow or roofing or selling kitchens or whatever.
Mhm.
It's not necessarily the end game thing as much as it is that entrepreneurial fun of running your own company. And so if you feel like you're an outside person or you feel like you like to work or build or do things with your hands, consider looking at one of these careers. Consider going to these stores and finding out what's missing in your town. But at the end of the day, Alex, the driving factor of all of this is why are you doing any of it? Which is, I need to know what your comfort, peace, and freedom picture is. I need to know what your nirvana looks like. I need to know what your 5, 10, and 15-year picture looks like. If I took 1,000-piece puzzle and dumped it on your dining room table, and then I walked away with the box and never showed you the box, you'd be in a world of hurt to try to build that puzzle, right?
Sure.
You might get the edges, like the easy pieces that everybody does. But then you're like, well, what the hell am I building here? I don't even know what it is. You take that box and you set it on the table standing up. You're going to look at that box. If there's 1,000-piece puzzle, I'll bet you look at that box 5,000 times. You're looking at that box like constantly. Well, it's driving your thought as to where you're building. Why wouldn't you use the same exact thing in your life? You know,
That's a great
look
analogy.
at that thing, look at that puzzle piece, draw what you want your life to look like, make that picture crystal clear and colorful and crisp and concise and detailed, and then look at it constantly. And your mind will automatically attract itself through reticular activating systems and all those other processes. It'll attract yourself to all those things. And that's the beauty of life is to live in anticipation of everything.
That's a beautiful way to put it. Now, I was a kid who went to college and had no idea what I wanted to do when I finished. I was completely at sea. And so I goofed around for a couple of years and was a bartender and a disc jockey at a radio station. I really fell into a career that I just stuck with because that's what I was doing. I've never had that vision. And then I got laid off at the beginning of this year. And I started doing this podcast because I thought, you know what? If I'm not going to have a job and I need to find something to do, I'm going to do something I love doing. And I have a clear vision for what it is. I may not reach it. I maybe have started too late or whatever, but I'm going to give it a go and I'm going to shoot for the stars. So now I have that clear vision at a much older age, and I'll take it. You know, how did you learn things like your reticular vision? I mean, you clearly have a bigger picture view of the world than many people do. So you've learned a number of things along the way. How did you come to all this knowledge?
Well, I guess
And that's a compliment. I
no.
only mean that
Thank
as
you,
a
thank you.
compliment.
I think it started with I obsessed about things I wanted. If I wanted that aluminum bat, I had a picture of it. I tore a picture out of the magazine and stuck it in my bed, and I just looked at it when I was 11 years old, and I thought about hitting home runs with it, or whatever, hitting down first base, third base. I thought about living, working, hitting, having, holding that bat. And the funny thing is, we are all born with the same brain, meaning the same ability to use vision. I mean, Elon Musk is a bright guy, no doubt. Okay. Um, Stephen Jobs, bright guy. Bill Gates, bright guy. All the people that have done that. But every one of them started with the words, what if? What if I could do this? And what if I could do that? Well, the words what if is nothing more than them looking at pictures inside their head. And what happens is, when I got this from Tony Robbins' son, Jarek Robbins, actually. Um, what happens when you stare at something that you have these electronic impulses in your brain that fire back and forth like a signal. And the more you stare at something, the more those electronic impulses not only get closer together, but they get faster to the point where it's almost one conscious stream of thought. Well, then what your brain does is it goes out and seeks those things. It goes out and finds a way to get those things through your actions, through your awareness, through your decisions, through your opportunity. And you don't even know it's happening. You just want these things so bad that your body involuntarily manifests those through action, not just through thought. And I thought, well, God, how unbelievably powerful is that? They say we never use more than 25% of our brain. Guess what the other part is? It's that visionary side. So it's free. You don't have to pay for it. I mean, you just go to a quiet place and start thinking about what you want your life to look like, and only in a way that only you can come up with. No one else can tell you this. So why aren't we doing that? Because it's hard enough to walk through life. But if you have a computer up here that you're not using, that you suddenly turn on, and now that
Yeah.
computer can help guide you like a GPS to the way you want to live, why wouldn't we do that? And so that's, to me, whether it was my first Camaro or the aluminum bat, or having some money in my pocket, or taking my girlfriend out for pizza, or going bowling with my buddy, whatever it was, I could see it there. And therefore I found ways to bring that into my life. What happens is that things get bigger, they get more expensive, and you find ways to match it. And so you kind of like do this, this chase, this anticipation chase. You actually get it, you start over, you keep going, and it just keeps building to the point where you end up going, wow, I guess I figured this out. This life's pretty cool. And it's only because you allowed a dormant part of your brain to turn on and start working for you.
Thank you for sharing that. That's really helpful. You talked about it a few minutes ago, but let's get into it because this is really the basis of your approach to life, it seems, which is the concepts of comfort, peace, and financial freedom. And you connected them in a triangle or a pyramid. Can you talk about how they're connected?
Yeah. So great question. Thank you for asking it. When my daughter was 12, she got cancer, and it was a rough time for her and for my wife and I. I mean, 5 years of nightmares. Um,
Yeah.
but I kept thinking to myself, because you have a lot of time when you're sitting in oncology rooms and waiting rooms and doctors' offices and all that kind of stuff. What would I tell her if I could write her a letter? What would I tell her about what she should be anticipating or what she should choose to chase in life because you always need to be pursuing something. And so it occurred to me that everyone has a different version or vision of their perfect nirvana. Some people are going to be rap stars. Some people are going to be influencers. Some people are going to be business people. Some people are going to be self employed. Some people want a McMansion and a yacht and 15 cars. Other people want a quiet house in the country. So I thought they're all right. Every one of them is right. Okay. So why don't we find what the right is? And the right to me was what is your level of comfort in many different definitions of that word? Where does your peace come from based on that? And then because of the comfort and the peace, what freedoms do you have that you otherwise wouldn't have? Have you gotten rid of stress? Have you gotten rid of, dependencies? Have you gotten rid of toxic relationships? Have you gotten to the point where you can be spontaneous? Who's spontaneous anymore? Nobody is. We're all so planned, right? So comfort, peace, and freedom, each one of those words has about 5 definitions within it. But I believe that they're all connected in a triangle because I believe one is interdependent on the other. The more
Hmm.
spontaneous I am, the more free I feel. The more free I feel to have the ability to go find peace. Okay. Walk my dog in the park versus stress out in a minivan. I mean, you have all these choices and they're right there in front of you. So as you look at these concepts, you start with one, where am I most comfortable? Am I comfortable in my own skin, in the way I'm perceived, and the way I see the world, the way others see me? Load that up on yourself first. Like, who am I? What's the best version of me? And then start going to places you find peace. And then hopefully that gains you the freedoms that you're looking.
Another interesting thing you shared in the book, you shared a number of really interesting stories. I don't want to give them all away because people need to go buy Blue Collar
Thank you.
Cash. But I do want to talk about you shared a story about Minnesota. Now, Minnesota, not the state, but a person that really resonated with me. Could you just give a quick summary of that story and why that's important?
Yeah. So this falls right back in the conversation that I just had about freedom and peace. So I took a bunch of people to Cancun to a Club Med years ago. And when you go there, they put these colorful wristbands on your wrist. And what that does is if you're yellow, that means you're there from Tuesday to Tuesday. If you're blue, you're there from Wednesday to Wednesday. So the people walking around know how long you are going to be there, or if you just got there, or if you're about to leave. And it's great because it helps their service people immensely. Well, this one gentleman, we would go to the bar every night and you pay for your drinks with these little beads that you would buy. And this guy had like 7 or 8 of these wristbands on and very tan. And so one day I'm sitting there and I'm like, so what is your story? What's through all the wristbands? And he says, well, I'm from Minnesota. He said, what I do is every year in March, I fire up my lawnmowers. I get everything ready. I hit the ground running in April. I mow lawns and I cut grass and I trim trees and bushes and I mulch and I do all these things with my 2 buddies and we bust our butt all the way through to December. And then when I'm done, I put all my stuff away, clean it all up. And then he goes, I get on a plane in January, February, and March. Okay. I just go for 8, 10, 12 weeks. I just go from one Club Med to another. I just bounce from one to the next, and I just hang out for 2 or 3 months. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. He goes, nope. I get a very nice little ranch house, 5-year-old pickup truck that runs like a top. I don't need fancy things. And to me, freedom is everything. Freedom and the ability to explore. And I thought, well, that's just an amazing story, right? Because that was
It
his
is.
nirvana. So I never got the guy's name. I literally, the next couple days, I went here, he went there, and I never saw him again. And so I never forgot the story, but it was such a beautiful story because that's what his nirvana looked like. It looked like sunsets on beaches. And if that was cool by him, it was cool by me. And so when I wrote this story, I wrote it from the perspective of the guy from Minnesota because I didn't, I think I called it the grass cutter from Minnesota because I never knew his
Yeah,
name.
you did.
So, hey, if you're out there listening, look me up because I'd love to know who you are. But that was a life lesson I learned from a complete stranger and I never forgot.
The reason it resonates with me is going back to what you said before. Everybody's ideal life is different and they're all right. And so judging and feeling like less than or you're a failure. And I felt that way in the past, but it seems to me to be so counterproductive. And reading your book really reinforced for me that everything is okay if it's okay with you and it's good for you. It's fine. There's no need to feel shame. And you talk about all these things in the book in much greater detail.
It's interesting that you say that because on your wall behind you, you have a Rolling Stones poster, right?
Yeah.
So I thought I was doing good because I saw the Rolling Stones like 4 or 5 times. Now I thought that was pretty cool. I was at a book signing several months ago, and the guy had a Kiss shirt on. And I was like, wow, that's pretty cool, because Kiss was in town here in my town. And he
Mhm.
came to see him. And I said, that's pretty wild. And he said, I've seen Kiss over 100 times. And I said, you've been to 100 Kiss concerts? He said, yeah, I've seen them over 100 times. And guess what? That was his thing. That was his Nirvana. He must have traveled the entire world to see Kiss 100 times. But that was his thing. And he was happy as a clam, and he got in his van and drove around the country. I thought, well, hell yeah, why not? If you could figure out a way to get it done. So
Yeah.
you never know what people's what they're anticipating, what they're chasing. But you know what? Every one of us is right in our own way, and that's the beauty of
Yeah. It's funny you say that because I've interviewed at least 5 people on this podcast who have seen over 1,000
it.
concerts
Wow.
and have seen single bands more than 250 times.
Wow.
And
Wow.
I can't even conceive of that. And I've seen like Springsteen's my guy. I've seen him 40 times.
Nice.
There are people who've seen Springsteen 1,000 times.
I mean, he wouldn't he have to know who they are in the front row by then? I mean,
He recognizes some of them apparently, but it's just amazing. And again, that's what they do. They save up their money
yeah,
and they go to Europe, they go on tour, they do whatever. And it's fascinating. I do want to talk about a couple other things while I have you here.
sure.
You talk about Malcolm Gladwell's 10,000 hours rule or approach to learning. And you said that that's an opportunity, not something that should be looked at as an impossible hurdle to overcome. Talk about that a little bit, if you would.
Let's assume that I'll use some generalities. Let's assume that you go to school for, 40 to 50 hours a week. Okay. That's 2,000 hours a year. Okay.
Hmm.
And in 4 years, you learn X, Y, and Z. There's your 8 to 10,000 hours right there. Okay.
Right.
Now, you could learn a trade or skill, um, learn how to open a flower shop or hairdressing place, butcher shop, a carpenter. You can be a carpenter, fish carpenter. You can do whatever. Learn how to become a stonemason, whatever. In the same time that you go to college, you can become an expert at one of those things, which catapults you into the financial world like crazy because of the supply and demand. So there are people who actually get out of high school and start throwing rocks around that probably take 2, 3 times the income that a fresh college graduate would take when he or she gets out of school. And so the 10,000 hour thing, it's for real because in this day and age, there's so few people that are willing to go into those trades that when a guy like me finds a new person, like a brand new baby bird, I am going to covet that person. I'm going to take them under my wing. I'm going to show them everything I know. I'm going to give them everything I got because there's less and less of them around to do this with. And
Right.
those people shoot up the ladder way faster than they ever did before. And the other thing, Alex, is, you know, you can run your business now with a cell phone and a pickup truck. I mean, you don't need, I have long form graph paper and pencils and calculators. You can call in payroll from your phone. You can
Right.
pay your bills and order things. And it's crazy how much easier it is to start your own business now than it is then. Like you mentioned college earlier, 40% of kids go into college not knowing why they're going. I did this research for the book. 25% of them, when they get there, change their degree. Another inefficient scenario. But here's the worst one, Alan. Only 1/3 of college degrees ever get used ever in people's careers. So you're talking about a wholly inefficient system. If that was a company, they would go out of business for lack of effectiveness, right? If the college system was a company, they couldn't survive. So it's amazing to me that the reason that is because, I'm not an anti-college guy. If you're going to operate on my shoulder so I can get back on the golf course, I want you to know everything there is to know about a knife before you come at me with it. I get that. If you're going to be a doctor, a nurse, engineer, teacher, financial person, yeah, you have to know those things. But if you're just going because someone says you have to go and you get good at beer pong, man, there's a whole lot of better ways to spend that $10,000.
Yeah, I'm a walking billboard for that. I wish I had known or thought that through properly when I was 18. What is a life clock, and what was your result of your experience with a life clock? This may be my favorite story in the book that I'm willing to share now because there are a couple of great stories I'm not sharing because I want the readers to read them. But the
Yeah.
life clock one was too good not to bring up.
So it was a December one year, and early on in our business, we were having a tough year, and the Christmas party was really small. It was like six of us, maybe a bottle of champagne, and you'd exchange gifts. And it was a quickie thing that, thank everybody for what they did. And there wasn't many people at this particular one. So I got this clock. It looked like a spaceship. It was painted candy apple red with like these starbursts on it. And so it's a clock and it said life clock. So I'm like, okay. So I plug it in the wall, get out the directions. It says enter your age, enter the time of year it is, enter all these things, and then hit go. So I did that. And immediately it calculated based on an average of 78 and 3/4 years of life. It calculated how many hours, minutes, and seconds I had left to live. So it starts spinning backwards like seconds, like on a timer, like watching the last 10 seconds of a football game. And I'm going, wait a minute, this is kind of freaking me out a little bit, right? So I'm looking at it
Yeah.
and I'm going, well, let's see if I can take advantage of this. So now I'm like, okay, I'm going to be Mr. Efficient. I'm not going to talk to that particular guy for that particular subject because that's a waste of my time. I'm going to do that. So I started getting really efficient with my time and other people's time. I was bugging the hell out of everybody else. Can you do this way, or let's do it this way? We can save some time. It got into this real almost paranoia kind of thing. So at one point, I remember I was gone for the weekend and I came back and I'm like, oh my God, 72 hours have disappeared. What am I going to do? So then I went on vacation, came back, 100 some hours disappeared. What am I going to do? And then I got to the point where I hated this thing because every time I came in, it was just erasing my life, like some demon sitting on even when I turned the lights off to close the door, it was staring at me with this light. And so it came in one day and I took that thing and I freaking put it on the ground and I just smashed it with my foot and broke into a bunch of pieces. But then it didn't die because the batteries were still in. I unplugged it, but it was still. So I killed this thing and threw it in the dumpster. But it had performed its job, which was don't waste time because as you get older, and I know you're going to agree with this, free time, spontaneous time, time with your family, time for yourself is by far the most valuable asset you will ever have in your life.
100%. The tagline of this show is life is short, so get those concert tickets.
Yeah,
And so this one was a home run for me. The lesson you learned from this. It's funny, you ended up calling it a death clock, didn't you? It wasn't a life clock.
I did. I called it the death clock. I was like, die, death clock, die.
Sounds
And
like a Twilight Zone
I think that,
episode, really.
yeah, everyone should have one of these just once, even if it's for a week. Everyone should have one of these because you will find yourself going, I am not wasting one more minute. And it really does wonders for you.
Okay, I have one more book related question. There are a couple other things in the book that I encourage people to go out and buy. There's a couple of questions that you ask that people can answer that help them start their own path. There's some steps that they can follow. There's a thought
Mhm.
exercise called How to Build a Skyscraper, which someone should read about. But I do want you to talk about why you believe generosity is the key character trait that everyone should focus on that will lead to all other successes and possibilities.
So Thank you again. I've always believed that giving back was an important thing, but it really turned a corner for me when my daughter got sick because a complete stranger, my daughter was a couple hundred miles away in a camp and 400 miles away. And we knew that she was sick. And we had an opportunity to go see the number one ranking person in her field in Philadelphia. And I was telling my friend, I really got to go get her. I got to get her to this place. These people want me there Monday morning. There's normally a 3-month waiting list because normally she sees 60, 70, 80-year-old people, but this was a 12-year-old girl. And this was like the person in that field. So a total stranger stepped up and said, here's my plane. Take my plane. Go get her. Fly her wherever you have to fly her. Just make sure you get that little girl healed. And even when I say those words, all that stuff comes back. Um, I saw him a few months later and I said, what do I owe you? And he said, you don't owe me anything. And I said, that's a big number. And he said, to whom much is given, much is expected. Just remember that. And I never forgot that. And my in the last 20 years, my generosity has gone on full turbocharge. I mean, it's now something that I do myself. I always did it, but it was much more involved with time and talent, not just treasure. And I involve everybody here in the same thing. We're building now peanut butter and jelly sandwiches by the 300s in 30 minutes. We do that once a quarter, and we're helping people with Christmas lists, and we're doing all these things where we get involved and actually do. We build dinners for Ronald McDonald House parents and all these things that we do. And I have to tell you something. You never want to do charity where you go. I mean, it's okay if you go to a black tie event and you're bidding on something that you hope to win, and then the money goes to charity because, in effect, you're giving $3,000 for that trip to Cancun, but the money does go to charity, but you're expecting something from it. That's fine, but I don't necessarily think you should expect something from giving. But there is something to the fact that the more you give, the more you seem to be blessed. And I can't put my finger on it, and you shouldn't do it for that reason. And if there is such thing as karma that way, I believe everyone has the ability, whether it's, I mean, for $55, you and 6 people can go build spaghetti, meatballs, and garlic bread in a salad for someone around McDonald House who's never going to meet you. They're never going to know who you are. But their kid who's sitting across the street suffering from some terrible disease, they're going to have a nice home cooked meal that evening while they're suffering doing that. And those are the kind of things that we're just built and meant to do. And so that's why I decided to put it in the book.
Thank you for sharing that part because, the book is
Yeah.
about, it's got cash in the title, but it's really not about cash. It's about the freedom to live a life of fulfillment and happiness and peace and comfort. And by driving that through generosity, it's almost a false pretense. Like you're offering it as about money, but it's really not about money at all. It's about fulfillment, isn't it?
Well, it is that, my original title was The Path, a Ditch Digger's Guide to Comfort, Peace, and Freedom. And I was overruled by some very smart people in New York City to put that title on it, which is fine. It was my first book. I wasn't even an author, so who am I to
Oh, and it's a
judge?
great
But,
title.
yeah, this is the title. And I said, well, all right, let's go with it. And it worked out. It became a bestseller, which again is mind-blowing to me. But yeah, I agree with you. The book is a lot more about how you see what your future could be than how to make a nickel or a dime.
All right, I have a couple of music questions to wrap up because it is a music podcast. I don't want to disappoint my listeners.
Absolutely.
First concert you attended?
Prince.
Oh, wow. Where?
It was in Richfield, Ohio, very long time ago, in between Cleveland and Akron. The Coliseum isn't even there anymore. They tore it down. It's been so long. But yeah, it was Prince.
Yeah, but a lot of great people used to play there.
Oh, yeah, it was awesome. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
fantastic.
Wow. Prince. That is a great first concert. Wow. Most memorable concert you ever attended?
God, that would have to be Pink Floyd in Indianapolis because they had this crazy thing in the middle that was covered in black sheets. But then on Shine On You Crazy Diamond, that thing came off and it opened up like this pineapple, and it just shot lasers all over the place, and it was mind blowing. I mean, people were just out of their brains when this thing happened. It was really cool.
Excellent. Now, first time you performed music in front of people in a band, how old were you?
I was 49.
49. And the next time you're building your band now, do you have a name for this upcoming band?
Well, the band's called Dead Roses
The Rolling
yeah.
Stones. Yeah. All right. The most recent concert you saw.
Most recent one would have been Jason Aldean, downtown Toledo.
Nice. How was that?
You know what? We have this venue here, and it's 8,000 seats, and I have these first in line seats where I get like first dibs on 'em. I never sit
Yeah.
in the pit area because it's insane down there, but I'm 2 rows up, so I can see over everybody's heads. And I've had people flicking their guitar picks to me. That's how close it is. So they're just good. I mean, Chris Stapleton was amazing. Kid Rock I saw there. A lot of great acts for this little tiny venue, 8,000 seater, but it's a great place
Yeah.
to get up close and personal with people. It's awesome.
That is great. I miss the 8 to 10,000 seat
Yeah.
arena, mini arenas. I love
Yeah,
those
I saw
places.
Joan Jett there, believe it or not. I mean,
Oh, she's so good. I saw her in
yeah,
Minneapolis once, and it was amazing.
yeah. So there's a lot of good people that come in this little venue in Toledo, Ohio.
That's great. Favorite musical act?
Oh, it's got to be Pearl Jam, and that's what I said earlier. I'm going to go see them here, hopefully in May. There you
That's
go.
great.
Yeah, I see it now. There you go.
Yeah, I saw them in Austin last year. They were amazing. Love them. Your favorite musical venue that you've ever been to? Favorite place you've ever seen a concert?
Oh, you know what? I saw a concert in there's art museum in Detroit, and I can't think of the name of it now, but it's downtown Detroit. You walk
Yep.
in, and it looks like the Sistine Chapel on the ceiling. I mean, there's all this beautiful artwork. It's all ornate, and it's just absolutely wonderful. I can't believe I can't think of the name of it now. It's downtown Detroit. And this funny thing was, I went to see Neil Young. I took some friends of mine, and when we got there, we're sitting in like the third row, and it's rather calm. And I'm like, why is it so calm? Well, they were doing a play. So my buddies are like, you took us to a play? And I said, it wasn't supposed to be a play. It was supposed to be a concert. Neil Young and his wife and a bunch of people, they're doing this play. And then all of a sudden, Neil goes, enough of that. And he threw everybody off. And then, Crazy Horse came walking out, and then he jammed for 2 hours. And I was like, I
Amazing.
was so thankful because I was like, oh my God, I took him to a play. But yeah, it
Uh,
worked out really well.
Bucket list, the musical act that's still performing that you haven't seen yet, but you most want to see.
Oh, wow. I got to see, oh, I got to see the lead singer of Zeppelin at the zoo last year. He's got a new band that's kind of like,
The Band of Joy, Robert Plant.
yeah, the Band of Joy. It's kind of like a
Yeah.
rockabilly kind of thing on his song.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And oh my God, would I love to see Zeppelin if they ever came back together.
Oh man, me too. I miss them. They did that reunion in London, and of course I didn't fly to London,
Right,
but today I would fly to
right,
London to go see that.
right.
Yeah. Do you have any concert tickets for upcoming shows?
Yeah, I've got Jason Aldean. I've got Keith Urban's coming back. I've got John Party's coming back. Those are all country. I do have
Yep.
the Pearl Jam tickets I'm waiting to get right now. Um, believe it or not, there's a knockoff band called Brit Floyd, who is an absolute perfect replica of Pink Floyd, down to the 3 singers that he has on the right-hand side, the 3 female singers,
Hmm.
everything. They're awesome, and I go see them every year, and I'm just looking over my safe now because I have 3 or 4 sets of tickets in there. I'll try to figure out who they were.
That's great. Well, Ken, that's all I've got for you today. Did I not ask anything that would be important for our listeners to know about you, the book, your love of music, anything?
The only thing I would say is, a lot of times when people read books, you got to get something out of it, and it can't just be shelf help, as they say. If you're going to read a self-help book, you need to use something. So I built this course. It's 8 sessions. I go on and I preempt the course by 3 minutes of video. So there's 24 minutes of listening to me. Okay. 3 minutes at a time. You take this
Hmm.
course and it forces you to do the things that we talked about today. It's called The Path to a Successful Life. It's on my website at kenrusk.com. And if you buy the course, you get a free book with it. I donate the money to first responders' kids. I give free courses to first responders' kids and people that are coming back from the military. So I really believe in if you've dodged bullets in your life, you shouldn't have to worry about anything the rest of your life,
Mhm.
defending our freedom. And so I really try to help those folks out. So if you do buy this course, you not only help yourself, but you're going to help somebody else in the process. And you can find that at kenrusk.com. And I really hope you do, because the people that have taken the course, it's been really well received. And people are like, you know what? I'm looking at this world a whole different way now. So
That's admirable. And I congratulate you and I thank you for sharing your story with us today.
absolutely. Thanks, Alex. It's been a blast. This was fun.
Thanks, Ken. And that's it for today's conversation. Thank you for joining us. We'll be back next Tuesday. And if you like what you heard today, we'd appreciate it if you would subscribe or follow and like to make sure you get notified about every new episode. And please tell your friends. Also, a reminder that we release a playlist for every episode, so look for the Rock and Roll Show podcast playlist on Spotify every week, featuring the songs from the bands that Ken and I talked about on the show today. So please check that out. Additionally, we want to know what you think. Please leave us a comment. We'll try to respond to all of them. We love hearing from you. Thank you. The Rock and Roll Show podcast is a World Highway Media production. I'm your host, Alex Gadd, and until next time, remember that life is short. So get those concert tickets.
How long do we go? I mean, we could have gone another
54
could have
minutes.
gone another hour. That was good. That was a lot of fun.